It's not very often you get to record a podcast with your cousin.
Yeah, oh, I appreciate that, yeah.
It honestly, I was just like, wow, like, we're both on a spiritual path.
Yeah.
I happen to be in England at this time.
Yeah. Like, the chances.
Well, again, I'm not, I've tried to move away from, this is something recent.
Okay.
Tried to move away from surprise about the things unfolding the ways in which it feels like, wow, that was meant how it was meant to be, but really kind of moved to a posture of being in gratitude or feeling awe even, like, wow, and just notice how that feels and how it's kind of, I just feel like it kind of moves me forward rather than just being locked in, like, oh, I'm surprised that things fall apart, but I'm surprised at how much they come together.
Yeah. Instead of being stuck in like the awe of it and this is amazing and then telling everyone I've just had this synchronicity, just maybe being in a place of this has happened because it is all divine, everything is divine, and bring on the next synchronicity. Because this is, I think, a synchronicity in some aspect, because I never knew you were on a spiritual journey at all, and I just had that sense of mentioning it in that voice clip I think I sent you.
Yeah, I like that word, synchronicity. I'll have to play around with that.
Yeah.
Later. Yeah, I like it.
Nice. So Hayden, you've recently come to the UK. So
I have.
How's that going for you?
It's strange because I was born here. I was born in Bedford, England, and it's like this place is familiar and yet not all at the same time. And my mother and sister would be like, oh, you're going home. And I'm like, is this home? So that's strange, but, you know, it is another home. So that's something I've been sitting with this trip in particular. And yet I'm coming back a different person, just having completed my PhD studies. And
Nice.
I'm happy to be here. I'm so glad that I don't have to be worried about finishing a dissertation, defending a dissertation, and I can just... This has been a big trip of just being. I've had a good time being in London and going out with my friend Andrew. That has been wonderful. And so I think this is going to be a little bit of a slower pace for me being in Bedford, and I'm grateful for it. It's beautiful looking out at the river and the swans and the ducks and the people walking by, and I absolutely love it and relish it. And I'm so excited and so grateful to be on this couch recording a podcast with my dear cousin Jamie.
Yeah, and it's amazing that you're here. Absolutely amazing. So you love nature?
I'm falling even more and more in love with nature. Out of all of sort of the elements, the one that feels the most elusive to me is the ground.
Okay.
Like literally the earth.
Yeah.
The earth is calling to me. You know, water, I love it. Fire, I can be very fiery in the air, like I get it. But the earth is something that I need more, just so I have my own inner grounding. So yeah, nature is a big teacher.
Nice. So how was the dissertation? How was going through that process? What did it entail exactly?
Which version of this story do we want? The hardest thing I've ever done, once I had my project sort of traced out, and then it was time to start analyzing the data and then writing it all up. It was hard because I actually just had to be with myself and honestly just give myself space and permission to just let my creative and really intellectual, analytical juices just flow. I didn't have the time necessarily to stop myself. And I mean, it's been life-changing.
Okay.
Absolutely life-changing to put forth and to try to carve and cultivate sculpture and you know, and throw pieces away and then bring other pieces back. And of course I still want to keep meddling with it, but you know, like at some point you just have to kind of just say, you know, this is where it's at right now and this is good enough to present. And I'm really excited to start publishing those papers and put them out into the world.
Amazing. And you mentioned earlier that you're a therapist and you've done a lot of work within that field.
Mm-hmm.
Are you planning to still stay within that field, or are you moving somewhere else? Or with your degree now, how are you using that going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I'm still in discernment about what my practice looks like. I've been practicing for a therapist for close to 10 years and a little bit, some stops and starts. I currently see a few patients, and what feels clear that, you know, sort of in this transition period of moving from one spot to the next, and I know I shouldn't be practicing right, because I'm going to be more of a professor. I'm going to be training the next generation of therapists, which is just like, wow, I'm going to be in this position now to, people are going to come to me and ask me questions, and I'm going to help them explore what's working for them, where they're getting stuck. And I mean, I feel very humbled by that, excited, a little bit in awe, like, wow, like I'm here. But then to use what you were talking about earlier, maybe I just kind of just let it go a little bit and just be like, okay, yeah, this is happening. But I want to focus on becoming a better teacher in this next iteration of Hayden.
Nice.
Yeah, I want to really focus on becoming a better teacher.
Amazing.
I've loved being a therapist. I couldn't see myself doing it full time, you know, for 40 hours a week. I just knew that wasn't me. I always know I need a little bit more. Now, do I see myself practicing therapy more in the future? Yes, but I think even differently than what I do now.
Okay, yeah. And also we spoke about earlier that you're on a spiritual path. And when did that start, and how did it start? And
well, you know, I'm a firm believer that we're all on the path, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. So for me, I can't even pinpoint when it happened. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and I was an altar boy, sang in the choir, did all of those things.
Yeah.
Was very ambitious in that space and loved the community aspects of it. Loved the leadership opportunities. And then, you know, admittedly, like, I think, you know, sort of coming out as gay and reckoning with that and Catholicism. And, you know, the interesting thing is I came out actually at a Catholic retreat. Like, I wrote a whole talk. It was a whole, I mean, it's really not what the question's about, but I always felt like there was more out there. And it sounds so cliche that I was always driving towards understanding who I was in relation to the divine, you know. And then after I came out as gay, I mean, I kind of was just like, this whole religion thing may not be for me. And I probably thought I was atheist for a little bit. But then, honestly, I think the mental health practice stuff started bringing me back to the idea of spirituality, because I love mental health. I love the tools that we use, some of the different therapy modalities that we use. But I also know that there's a bigger container to put all of that in. And it's the existential questions that we have. Who am I? What's my purpose in this world? Where do I come from? Where do we all come from? Why do we have suffering on this planet? Why do I suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people? All these big questions. I knew the questions weren't going to be answered, and those are the things that are driving people's anxiety and their depression oftentimes, or them wanting to understand why people treated them cruelly, or, you know, from very many different aspects. And I think that, along with my social justice ethic, I think was one of the reasons why I started being like, okay, what is this all pointing to? And I definitely think understanding that there's a higher power, that there's something else happening, and the mystery of it. And I'm not someone that's interested in the dogmatic ways of thinking about any of this, but yeah, for sure, I definitely feel like I'm on a spiritual path, and I have a particular calling in that.
So yeah, I imagine through your work you have seen a lot of suffering from your patients, and that's where you come in and do your best to support them.
Yeah, for sure. People are coming in with very specific problems sometimes, or they come in thinking it's a specific problem, and really we just start kind of blowing it up, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was connected. Because so much of the suffering is connected to things that may have occurred in their childhood, or the ways in which they've internalized particular societal messages about
Yes.
who they are and how they're supposed to love. And, you know, someone that primarily works, my mental health interests and my research interests are related to queer people of color. So what does it mean to be someone that is not white, as well as someone that is not sort of heterosexual or cisgender? Like, what happens when there's these overlapping systems? And what strengths and resiliencies do folks who come from these communities have? And we have them, and I've seen them, and I've experienced it, and I've been liberated and saved by the very, you know, same community that I hope to serve and continue to serve.
Amazing. So is racism still quite a problem where you are? I think you're moving to Pennsylvania, is that right?
Yeah, I want to understand more. I can't really speak to the Pennsylvania or the Philadelphia context. You know, my intuition and gut kind of says that, you know, especially in somewhere like America, that white supremacy is in the air that we breathe, and it's in the water, and sometimes we can't see the ways in which it's operating. Sometimes I can't see the way in which I'm operating under those same kind of norms of how we're supposed to be in the world.
Yes.
So I do my best to sort of slow down and desensitize myself to it, while also not being stuck to define the environment nor other people or myself based on what I'm seeing in the water and what I'm breathing in the air.
Yeah. I do feel that the environment is a big part of who we become as we grow up. You mentioned
For sure.
childhood trauma. Like, I think a lot of us have a degree of trauma when we're younger. It seems to be inevitable at some point that then sometimes it can then define us unless we perhaps work on it, which is where the spiritual element comes in. I don't know if with your patients you've had, do you think there's more people coming from a spiritual point of view? Is there more, do you reckon, a spiritual element that people are not latching onto but seeking out?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Like, you know, I tend to be an agnostic kind of therapist in the room, and depends on what people are bringing in and whether they're opening up to the ideas of spirituality, spirit, but, you know, I do think there's been a little bit of a shift in that more people are coming in with those ideas and those frameworks for them to understand what's happening. I mean, we have to remember, we've gone through like really big societal issues in the past, 3 to 4 years. When we think about the COVID-19 pandemic, we think about all of the social political change related to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the American political system of what it is, as well as now we look to the war in Ukraine, we look to what's occurring in the Middle East. These questions are so big, and we are so inundated with messages about how we're supposed to think about it, whose side we're supposed to be on. When we open up our phones, when we turn on the TV, we're just so bombarded with opinions. I think people have, because there's been no escape, they've had to go to a spiritual kind of level in order to best understand it. That's just a working theory that I have.
Yeah. It does seem like we have had the same kind of information for such a long period of time that we're seeking answers elsewhere because what we have right now doesn't perhaps serve us. I mean, I can say that from my own personal experience, that I've sought out just new ideas and new ways of thinking of things. I began my spiritual journey probably about 10 years ago, and it was very enlightening because I came across information that I never came across when I was younger. And we have the internet, so the internet has,
Sure.
I think, brought about so many different changes in people because we have had access to everything all at once, you know, and that's where people are steering perhaps away from mainstream media and into podcasts or social media.
Right. Yeah, and I just want to sort of like make sure that we sort of talk about like the downsides to this proliferation of new medias is like the quality control of it.
Yeah.
Thinking about misinformation, disinformation.
Yes.
Which has very negative unintended consequences for, or some people are using it for nefarious means. But I think you're right. I think people are feeling more empowered to seek this stuff out, while at the same time people aren't seeming to trust these bigger institutions the same way, such as like the church, whatever you want, however you might want to define that, to provide them the answers. Because it's like, look, people feel as if the world is on fire and we have, you know, global catastrophe when it comes to the earth, when it comes to the climate. So it's like, I think it's forced a lot of people to surrender, to look for those new pathways that you're sort of talking about.
Yes, yeah. And do you think there is a distrust in mainstream media or news that we have?
I mean, I can speak for what I've noticed in the States. I do think there is a culture of that, of conspiracy theories. You can't trust what folks are telling you, and I think it's one of the reasons why the political system is where it is. I mean, I don't have the hard data for that right now, but these are it just feels like there's a lot of churning that's happening in our sort of collective system. Like now, like I'm a big fan of Ram Dass, and Ram Dass's the Be Here Now Foundation's podcast. It's called Love, Serve, Remember is the name of the podcast, I think. Anyways, what I have been so interested in is that this teacher was talking about political turmoil, he's talking about the earth in the 60s, in the 70s. So part of me wants to like take a step back and say, this is just the nature of the earth and history's cyclical, perhaps evolving or devolving, depending on who you ask, nature. So I want to, as much as possible, is to rest in a deep peace of like, I'm really focusing on what I can do. And also remember that some of these issues like racism and white supremacy and environmental justice issues, like they've been here since the beginning.
Yes, but why do you think it's still happening? Like Morgan Freeman, he has said that he, in the past, I don't know where he is now, that he doesn't want a Black History Month because it's bringing up the differences, it's bringing up racism. Do you think that it's possible to not bring things up to then not make it an issue? Or is there another way of tackling problems like this in the world? Because it seems like if we continue to focus on the differences between us, then that then perpetuates it. How can we get to the point where we're not perpetuating something?
Yeah, I think it's a great, interesting question. So for me, I kind of see it on multiple different levels. It absolutely is important to have a Black History Month to honor the contributions of African Americans, Black folks who have literally built the country with their labor, with their tears, with their bodies, and with their lives. And it's important to honor that because it's not going to be honored from the white folks the same way. It's just not. It's like, how would it be if I was telling your family story and not letting you tell your family story? It's going to be different. That being said, what you're talking about to me is like the over-identification of it. I think what happens on a sort of societal level is that as people of color, Black folks try to say, oh, this is our story, white folks then have their reaction to say, oh, well, we don't want you to tell it like that because it makes us feel uncomfortable. They end up reifying it in their own way rather than just allowing the story to be there and to just let it sit and let it to come and go away. I'm going to put it on a lot more personal terms of what I mean with this. I try to tell my patients or whoever I'm working with that, like, yeah, we can have a diagnosis. We can say, you have anxious symptoms. We can say you have anxiety, period. And then person says, I'm anxious, I have anxiety. And then before you know, they're so identified with the thought that they're anxious and they have anxiety all the time.
Yes, yeah.
Rather than saying, I'm a person that experiences anxiety.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I might have some anxiousness that occurs for me. Just a way to develop some more distance, right? But I think it's difficult with our culture, and I'm no culture change expert in this way. I think it's really difficult when there's, number one, you're dealing with so many different parties who have different interests as to weigh things, invested interest to ensure that the status quo maintains itself and things stay the way that they've been. But I might say with the person too, some people have a vested interest in overly identifying with the idea that they're of their pathology.
So this podcast, the theme of it is how we can make the world a better place. In your opinion, how can you see the world being a better place?
Yeah, I think for me it's like seeing how beautiful it already is and doing our darndest to ensure that that beauty remains there and we actually grow from it.
Yes.
And so this is why I think growing from what's already good. There's so much good that already happens.
Yes.
It's like I already see so much love being extended to people. I just took the train from London, and as these families were saying goodbye to each other at the train station, I was just so touched by that.
Yeah.
That is, to me, those seeds of I love you and I will miss you and I hope to see you again. Like, that's what this whole game is about.
That's the beauty, right?
That is the beauty. And how do we create societies and structures in which more of that gets to happen?
Yeah. More connection with one another?
More connection, more abundance, more joy, more space. More space. Allow there be space for everyone's feelings, everyone's ideas, everyone's thoughts, everyone's feelings. There's enough space for all of it.
Yeah.
But when we have to let people just be there rather than getting so, because that's how, to do spiritual terms, that is how we build the kingdom on earth.
Accepting one another, giving people that time and space that they need. Everyone's so busy and rushing around and trying to get this done and that done, and they're not having enough time for themselves, and then that doesn't make them particularly healthy. It seems to be a vicious cycle at times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you would say people having enough time, enough space, and figuring out themselves could be making the world a better place.
Absolutely. And like the time and the space doesn't have to be a lot. Like there's so much unused moments to really tap back into oneself, one's source, that folks don't even think about utilizing. Okay, so if you're going to be in the tube for, I don't know, an hour, that's the subway for you Americans. If you're going to be in the subway for an hour, or, maybe that's the time to just sit and notice what is happening right there and then. Oh, I can't use my phone to text anybody. Maybe you do read a book, maybe you do listen to this podcast, but even maybe you just pause it right now and you just say, okay, I really just want to get in contact and take some really deep breaths and really feel nourished, really notice the things that I've done to take care of myself. Let me tell you one thing that I've done with my people on social media. And it's just like such a highlight of my life. So then I started doing this thing called, have you ever heard of a Flex Friday?
No.
So Flex Friday is for all the gym bros to start going in the mirror, okay. My women too that are out there in the gym to look and flex and to send a picture about their gym progress, right? Progress. I don't know how to say that word. Anyways.
Yeah, that works.
So then I said, what if on a Friday, we sort of said, what's your flex for this Friday? So Jamie, what is your flex for your Friday? What's the one thing that you've done this entire week that you can be proud of. And it can be so, so small. It can be like, you know, the flex that I'm giving myself is, you know, I emptied the dishwasher before anyone had gotten home. Because oftentimes it's someone else that does it. It can be something
Amazing.
small.
Yeah.
Or my flex is I had that hard conversation that I needed to. Or I really did enjoy the bubble bath. Or, you know, I finished a dissertation. That's my flex. It can be any size, but what matters is it just has to be meaningful to that person.
Yes. Yeah.
Because who's to say what a flex is for the other person?
Yeah. Everyone has their own perspective.
Absolutely.
And idea of it. Yeah.
So that's one thing that we can start building more of these, especially as the world becomes more secularized. When people were going to, you know, church and other places of worship more often, they had regular rhythms to do some of these things. But, you know, I get it. People don't want no old white man telling them how to live their life anymore. And I know there are other people that are up there that aren't old white men anymore. But they still want to they want to say like, oh, there's different ways of doing this. But we have to institute and habituate ourselves to following these intentional practices to commune with the divine, to commune with ourselves. And so that's one small thing that we can do to help serve the world. Ask a friend, yes. What are you proud of that you've done this week?
Myself, giving myself enough time without any distractions of anything is when I feel most at whole at times. So I gave myself a lot of time. I did a bit of meditation.
I love it.
Quite a bit of meditation, and it feels just really good.
What if I told you your meditation actually serves the world?
With the energy we put out there, or with the understanding ourselves?
I think both. Like, one thing I was thinking about when I was in my practice, and I was like, I can't do anything about Gaza.
No.
You know, sending money and talking to politicians but wow, what I can do is I can sit and I can try to cultivate more peace within myself. Mm-hmm. And guess what? As I've cultivated, if we were to zoom out and look at the Google Earth's vision of this planet, this beautiful sphere that seems to be in a perfect distance from the sun, by the way. Like, talk about, what was that word you use? Synchronicity? Synchronicity.
Yeah. Yes.
Think about that synchronicity. Like, everything is like,
yes,
just so.
Yeah.
But to think, as I sit and I meditate, wow, there's actually more peace in the world in this moment than there was before.
Yes, yeah. We are in that Goldilocks zone, aren't we? What I've learned is that coincidences don't actually exist. It is all meant to be. Everything that has happened and that is happening is perfect. And that can be almost a tool for people to realise that you can't go wrong, that you have the power and you have the choice to do whatever serves you in this moment, and using it to your best and to your advantage.
Yeah, I might phrase it a little bit differently. I might say that it has to be aligned with the spirit. Like I'm starting to. I went from being a little bit more of a non-theist to now being more of a theist again. But I think whatever serves God will also ultimately be the thing that serves you. But it depends on which you're speaking from. If it's the egoic you that wants to keep you separated from the love that's out there, from the strengths and from the abilities and potential that you have, then no, that's not the you that we want to serve its wants. But if it's the you that like is wise and is noticing your whole life experience happening, like, yes, that is the you that if we give that you more permission to live and to be and to serve not just themselves but the world, that's when all the magic happens. I have a firm belief. For me, I think we're only here for 3 reasons: learn to love God, learn to love each other, other people, and learn to love yourself. And the irony of it is, in my mind, is you cannot do one of those things without doing all three of them.
Is that because we are all one?
We're all one. And we come from the one, the all, the energy, the source. And yeah, we have free will, so we can do some nutty, crazy things to try to get out of that. And yet, we're still on the path.
Yes.
Because there's nothing that is possible there's nothing can occur if it's not within God's will. Yeah. And yet we still have free will. I'm still trying to figure that out. It doesn't quite make sense to me. But somehow it makes sense. I don't know.
Yes. It's almost like there isn't any good or bad or right and wrong. It is just experience. And I think that comes within the philosophy of spirituality, because it is just experience that we have here. But then where does morality come in? If it is just experience, that means I can then just, go and hit someone on the street if I chose to, if I was out of that mindset.
Yeah, but I think I hear you. And I think if you're doing the work of awakening and learning to love yourself and love other people, yes, to learn to love God, you wouldn't want to. And you make different choices. Mm-hmm. Not because you're necessarily worried of how the other person will be impacted, because that might happen, but because you're like, it's not gonna feel good to you.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't want to harm another living being. Not because listen, there are some people out there like, baby, come on. Yeah. Listen, I joke, and this is not funny. So the full disclaimer alert. When things go wrong, some people, they go a little bit suicidal. They blame themselves. I ain't that girl. I go homicidal, okay? That's me. But I'm never going to choose to do it. I'm not going to do it. You want to know why? Because I know ultimately it would be so miserable for me. Why would I want to hurt anybody? Yeah. And because I see that I am also them and they are also me, why would I want... No, I don't want to hurt them because I'm hurting me. Yeah. It's not worth it.
No. If we are all one, which is that's what I feel, then why would I choose to hurt you? Because I'll just be hurting myself.
Right, and I think this kind of goes back to what you were saying about the quote from Morgan Freeman.
Yes, that he doesn't want a Black History Month.
Is that when you really can see that the other is also you, yes, you're not threatened by whatever any particular group might need for their needs. You're not.
No.
I'm not it's just like I'm not, like, as a male identifying person, like, I know I have some sexism to work through. And it comes up in unexpected ways where I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that. Like, oh, wow, I'm mansplaining. Or like, oh, wow, like, I didn't think about it that way. Or I'm not really thinking about the ways in which mothers have to hold down a household and hold down a job. And not just hold down a household, know where everyone is going, all at it. And listen, shout out to the dads and to, my gender non-binary folks that are raising folks too. Like, I'm not trying to make this so gendered, but like, wow, I have to check that. And I'm checking it because I don't want to treat that part of the greater self, the bigger self of me that way. Why would I want to do that? So I understand that women and other groups and other affinity groups, they need their moments and they need their space to shine. And I'm not threatened by it because, baby, I'm abundant enough as I am.
Yeah. Hey. Nice. And, I feel like people do give up a lot of their power, and they're not coming from that place of, I can do this. This is me and this is who I am. And that's part of the spiritual journey, is finding out who you are. And perhaps we never get to that end of that, but it's still exploring it because it's working on the things that can hold you back in life, like attachment. How do others expect me to live? If we get wrapped up in all of that, then it does not serve us in the end. We're not actually living for ourselves.
Right. I totally agree with you. And I even tell my, when I'm training therapists this, one of the best benefits of being in the career that I have and being now thinking of myself as a teacher is that nothing that I go through, no challenge, no stuck point, no trauma, no racism, no homophobia, no whatever other ism or discrimination that I experience, nothing has to be wasted. So I'm starting to respect when people aren't quite there yet. I am trying to trust the unfolding of it all, the larger whatever this is, so that I'm just like, okay, this is how it is. This is what's going. You know, like,
no judgment on them.
I'm trying to do my best to live non-judgment. Listen, Judgement was a go-to for me. I was a good judge. Girl, I could still judge and read a bitch down any day of the week.
Yeah.
And do it fluently in multiple different languages, darling. Because I've always had X-ray vision. Always had. And when I was in deep shame, I would cut a bitch even before she even come close to the threshold of the door. I would see her from the hallway. Oh no, sweetie, that is not gonna work for me. You need to turn around, pivot, turn. I never want to see your face ever again. So like, yes, I get it. Like I went through those years. There was a part of me, like, I would look back and I'd be like, oh my gosh, you were mean. I was trying to protect my tender heart.
Yes.
I am a marshmallow. I love everybody and all. I was trying to protect it. And I'm grateful for that bitch because she protected me. But now it's like, stand down. You don't need to show up right now, girl. But you know what? It's good to know that there's a lethal girl there if everyone tries to run a game. Because sometimes when people think you're just tender and sweet, they don't know that you still have teeth. But I don't have to go there anymore because I'm not I don't have to defend myself.
No.
Because I've recognized, and this is from a spiritual principle, that through my power lies in my defenselessness.
Yes.
Jamie, you know what spiritual teacher has been coming to me and I'm just like, wow. Absolutely wow.
Who?
Mahatma Gandhi.
Nice.
To think he brought down one of the most powerful empires that has ever existed in human history. All from the power of his writing, his organizing with the people through prayer and meditation. And with just sheer conviction of we are full-fledged human beings. And I love you too. And I'm not just doing this for me, I'm doing this for you. No, the British need to leave, and they need to leave as friends. What? Not enemies, friends. It's very powerful. And it's just like, I read somewhere that what he did is one of the first times in human histories where he scaled love to be a collective movement.
Yes.
And to think, that was a skinny man. He fasted and got people. His people loved him so much that he was fasting when he wanted them to change, and they stopped fasting because they wanted him to stay alive. That's some powerful stuff.
You had a way with people, and love is such a powerful movement. It's such a powerful force, right? And I think we need a little bit more of that in the world. We need more momentum to drive us forward. I think if we come from a place of love than fear, then I think the world will be a better place.
Yeah, and I think it's already here. I really believe that. I really believe that it's already here. We're just too scared to be in it. We're letting the old bitchy self, whatever that might look like for a person, that's what mine could look like. We're letting that be in the front. Instead of trusting more of the marshmallowy ways where we have to give up. You have to give up control. I'm going to tell you another powerful thing about love to me, Jamie. I think many of us don't know how to receive. So we block the reception of love. And then it doesn't become love anymore. It becomes, if I'm always the one giving, that allows me to be, I'm the charity worker, I'm the martyr, look how good service I'm doing from I'm overly identifying with the role of I'm the helper.
Yes.
And then I put you in a lower position so that I can stay in the higher position. But if we're all one, it's like, oh, I'm serving me and we're serving each other.
Yes.
Even if you happen to be in a wheelchair or are stuck in a bed and for some reason, what? Or you have some neurodivergence and I'm making accommodations for you. I'm doing that because I'm loving you and it's an extension. Love expands and it's already there.
Yes.
It's already there. We just have to slow down and notice it. Yes. And when it's there, flan that fame, baby.
Embrace the love.
And it's hard to, because, I'm going to tell you the story. So while I was finishing up my PhD, first semester, I remember my classmates, we were all doing our stats projects together. And I was like having so much fun, and I didn't have a lot of time to help them with theirs because I had an appointment that I had to go to really quickly, even though they were all going to stay and continue working. Jamie, they were slowing down, they were asking questions, they were helping me out, they were thinking things through differently, showing me a lot of attention, and it was overwhelming for me because I wanted to give back quicker, right?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't, but I had to leave. And so by the time I left, I felt a little bit shamed and ashamed, and like, wow, I couldn't really support them the ways that they helped me. So I was going to my therapist's office and I sat down and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, Kate, the way these people are showing up for me, it's a lot, it's really intense, it's a lot. I said, oh my gosh, it's too much, it's way too much. I was like, they're helping me, I'm barely there to help them. And she said, Hayden, what if it's not too much? What if it's just delicious? And I just took some breaths. And then I was like, feeling actually supported and held by the chair I was sitting in. I'd released enough. And then I was like, oh, this is what it means to be held by someone or something else, other people. And then I'm feeling held by the things that we take for granted, chairs. When was the last time you actually sat on a chair and said, thank you, chair, for holding me up?
Yeah, never done it.
Or even going further with it, wow, thank you to all the people who took part in creating this thing that I'm sitting on. I want to thank them. I want to bless them because they are blessing me.
The gratitude.
Yes, and then it brings the synchronicity together because you're thinking about, wow, if those people hadn't done that, I wouldn't be able to sit on this chair right now.
Yeah.
And it's all coming together in this magic way. And then I remember after I left my therapist's office, I said to one of my colleagues, I was like, wow, the way you all support me, it feels like a lot, and I wasn't able to show up. And he said to me, Hayden, one of the reasons why we are as close as we are is because you show up the way that you show up. So it was so great,
amazing,
that we could show up for you like this.
Sound like some good people.
I love them dearly, and they love me. And it's a teaching that I continue to go back to that. I've told that story maybe 1,000 times, and I will tell it 1,000 times more. Because these are the simple things that if we slow down and notice that fear of like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, this is too much. But then if we just, or ask for help. How many of us don't know how to ask for help? I was literally in a therapist's office, like, girl, I'm paying you to help me, girl. And she said Hayden, what if it's not too much? What if it's just delicious? I mean, I melted, all the frostiness, because I'm Elsa the Queen sometimes. But all of that melted away, and I was just like, okay. Because sometimes we fight our receiving of it.
Yes, yeah. When someone used to offer me, say, money for this, or let me give you this as a gift, and I'd feel like, I need to give them back as well. But it's the art of receiving. It's saying, no, thank you, I appreciate that. And it's a human thing. It goes back to the beginning of when we, from one tribe to another, would give the gift to the other tribe. I think that's within our human nature. We are gifters and we are also receivers. It's actually trying to find the balance and between that all, because we spoke about balance earlier. We spoke about whether we felt the world is in balance or if it's out of balance right now, or perhaps it's not even balance. I mean, if consciousness is rising, then are we rising more into balance? Or if we are in balance now, then what are we going into? Is it impossible to live in balance? Where are we at with that? What do you reckon?
I don't know, and I'm so glad that the world is not in my hands, because I would do a terrible job with this balance thing. I don't know. I think one of the spiritual principles that I think about all the time, probably is impermanence.
Yes.
Things are always fluid and evolving and non-static.
Yes.
Change is always occurring.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, and okay. When things are good, I want them to stay static. When they're bad, I'm like,
that's right,
baby,
that's right.
Let's move this thing along.
Yes.
I'm good. I got it. But the ignorance of both of those things. And so how can I just allow them to be there? So I don't know what the world is doing, but I can tell you this, and what I love what you're doing. I'm curious as heck about it. I don't need to understand it, but I can be curious about it. Oh, wow, let's just see how this is going to... Well, I'm not going to see how it's going to end. I'm going to do my part here and now. And I don't think we're going to be able to see what this time in history is like until, much later.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm okay. I'm at peace with that.
Yes, yeah. Having a sense of curiosity, I think, is healthy as well. And the world does change, and I like to try and keep up with the change. But then I think it's inevitable. If we are changing ourselves, then the world is changing because it's just a reflection of us anyway.
Well, yeah, and I like what you're saying about that, because I totally agree that, many spiritual masters talk about that the world is a projection of our inner worlds.
Yes.
And I know my inner world's changing, but I can't tell you how it's changing.
No, yeah, it's hard.
So I definitely can't tell you how the world is changing.
No, it's hard to articulate. We have access to certain information, and we can only go with what information resonates with us as truth. We have information out there, but I think the best truth machine is ourselves. Does this feel right? Does this feel like truth? Does this feel like something I can take on board as me, as what is, all that is?
Yeah, and I think even what you're talking, what that brought up for me is there's certain things that I thought were truths for me a few years ago that are no longer truths for me now. I'm trying to give an example, but I guess what I'm interested in is what are the eternal truths that are never changing.
Yes, like the big questions, like you mentioned earlier. What is the purpose of life?
What's the purpose of life?
Who are we? The absolute truths.
Yeah, because the smaller ones of will racism go away? I don't... I mean... Is it less than it was before?
That's difficult, isn't it? It's focusing on the good things, I think, and then that will probably catapult us into a new way of thinking. I think the old ways of thinking don't really serve us to this day. It's like some structures that are in place, I don't think serve us. For instance, perhaps the political system as it is, we have the same kind of mindsets that go into these political systems, and I don't know if we have changed to the scale we could have it, considering the amount people are changing and society changes. But
yeah, you're making me think about the I think it's the Einstein quote that in order to solve, I'm paraphrasing that, in order to solve a problem, you have to be at a higher level of consciousness than the one that created it.
Yes.
The problem.
Yes. I think another one is be the change you want to see in the world.
Mahatma Gandhi.
Was that Mahatma Gandhi? Yes. And it's true. All these spiritual teachers, they're saying it, you know, over and over again in different ways. You know, maybe the change needs to happen within us before we can expect the change in the world, right?
Preach.
So maybe we can just work on ourselves. So it's the inner work, you know.
Yeah, and I look to the great spiritual masters and sages. Gandhi is one of them. Martin Luther King is one of them. Mother Teresa is one of them. Jesus is one of them. All the great prophets. They live their lives as examples.
Yes.
They live their lives truly as an example of people that were reflective and that were doing their inner work, while also still working on the material realm to create long-lasting structural change. Because if you're just working on the material, I think people get burnt out, or they get burnt out a lot, or they're not rooting it in a deep enough purpose that actually will help them sustain over a long period of time. And if you're just spiritual, I think Mama Dawes might say you're so heavenly bound, you're no earthly good. I don't know what part of the Bible that comes from, but that's when you become so separated from the people suffering that you see right in front of you, and you lose your way to start thinking that you're the God that's transcending everything. No, it's not about just you transcending. It's about you being able to hold that, yes, people suffer. Yes, racism is real and it means nothing. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not defining myself by those terms anymore. No. I want to see myself past the trauma of the oppression, the homophobia, and all of that. I don't want to look at another person and just see them as one thing. I want to see past that. I want to see the beloved in their eyes. And the only way we do that on a larger scale is if we are willing to both see the flesh, the material, and also see the spirit and the soul of the entire world to help move things forward. Yes, we need good policies. We need better practices that ensure that people get the care and the resources that they need so that they can sit on a mountain and figure some stuff out.
Yeah. The inner work, the spiritual growth, and the service to others. So it's the balance, and that's what that's what these spiritual masters and teachers seem to have. They have that perfect balance, which is why it struck so many people.
I mean, I don't know if I would call it perfect. I mean, they were human beings too.
Yeah.
And I think, and the reason why I'm pushed back on that is because I think it's I think what we just, to go back to what you said, we render ourselves powerless by putting these folks on such a pedestal to think that we aren't made of the same goods.
No. Yes, but we are everything that they are, because they are a reflection of us. But I hear you. Yeah, I do hear you. We shouldn't put people on pedestals.
And yet, sometimes, yes, and sometimes we do need them on a pedestal because we need an example of what we can become. Yeah. But again, this is the fluid nature of even ourselves changing. At some stage in my life, I had some different teachers, in my head that I'd be like, oh my gosh. Now I'm like, okay.
But they served us at that moment in time.
Thank you.
They were perfect for you, perfect for me at that moment in time. I have moved on from spiritual teacher to spiritual teacher because and still am, because I am still receiving information.
So you're a hoe too?
Yeah, I am. Figured out, damn.
Well, I am one as well. I get it. No, for real. And because they all reflect a different aspect of the multitudes that you already possess in yourself.
Exactly. Yes.
No one. But see, that's the other thing is I'm done looking for, at least I think I'm done looking for, one perfect teacher, one perfect teaching, one perfect dogma. Because no, I don't think it's meant to be that way.
No. This human experience doesn't come easy at all. But why should it? This is the human experience.
Let me tell you, some of the hardest things I've done have been the most rewarding. And it's so strange to me. Like, these are the things that you hear when you're like at different stages and you're like, yeah, I think that's true. But like now, baby, I have a testimony to tell. It's the truth. forcing myself to do things I know I was meant to do, even though I was scared shitless to do them, has forced me to ask for help. It has forced me to actually surrender to my strengths. It has forced me to deal with my limitations in a way that was much more gentle to myself. It forced me to love myself and to be loved by others much better than before. All because I was truly willing to do whatever it took to do what I was meant to do in that purpose. But you have to get very clear about it in that moment. It's not going to be clear all the time. Sometimes you can have doubt, and that's okay too.
Yes, and even if you're in an uncomfortable situation, that is probably when you're going to grow and develop and change and become the best version of you that you possibly can. Yeah, I hear you. You mentioned the ego identity and the spirit identity, or our divine essence. How do you manage to find, say, the balance? Because we're talking about balance, or how do you love
the word balance.
I love the word balance. It's within my aura and mind at the moment, and I think the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I'm trying to find a balance in externally the information that I get, and internally. So it's an interest of mine at the moment. So I guess how do you balance your egoic identity, because we all have ego?
It's interesting because now that we're thinking about balance, you're having me thinking about the pendulum and the wisdom of the pendulum. And maybe I'm thinking of one of my spiritual teachers, Lama Rod. He's like, yeah, sometimes to get free, you got to go to the extreme.
Okay. And then come back, or stay in the extreme?
I mean, generally you want to come back, but like, in order to really understand something and to understand yourself doing a thing, really going all the way in it, and then just being like, wow, that was too far, let me walk it back. To find where there is more. A word that I might like to use is equanimity. To the part where there's equanimity, for me, feels like just a tiny bit better than neutral, just a tiny bit more positive than neutral. Really allowing yourself to be in such a state that no matter what happens, like for me, listen, if Donald Trump ends up becoming president again, baby, I'm not gonna freak out. I don't want to go there anymore.
No,
I don't.
It's not good energy to.
For what?
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I'm going to try to do better. I'm trying to help other people to do better. But no, like, I can't, like, I'm not giving up. I'm just maintaining a posture of willingness and openness and receptiveness towards whatever might happen. The ego tells me I need to control it all. The ego tells me I'm not allowed to feel peace, joy, nor love until all of these societal issues are fixed. No, I don't think that. I don't know.
No.
And
that's the mind. That's the sabotaging mind. That's the egoic mind, the monkey mind that just goes and goes, and it's almost like what I found is like taming it and not let it get out of control, because it can spiral. It can really spiral and take you off path.
Right. And I think even if it does happen, for me, I'm starting to understand, it's like, sometimes I'm out of control. Not gonna lie. Y'all, talk to my husband. Okay?
Will he say that?
Right. Listen to me in the kitchen sometimes on the phone, talking to someone or talking to him. My neck is going back and forth. Like I'm acting crazy.
Okay.
The difference is, can you be conscious of what you're doing? Can you be aware of, wow, I'm out of control right now. Don't know how to get off it, but I know I'm out of control.
But you're aware of it.
You're aware of it because guess what? When you stop being out of control, then you'll be like, oh, I can see how I got there.
Yes.
I think I've learned what I need to do. How else can you learn if you don't lose control sometimes?
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
How else do you learn not to believe the ego if you're not paying attention to it? Yes. It's the consciousness, to me, that makes the difference.
Yes, yeah. That's what we need more of in the world.
Oh, for sure.
Terence McKenna is someone that I've listened to quite a lot, and he said that psychedelic drugs, before they were called psychedelics, they were called consciousness enhancing substances. Do you think psychedelics can play a role in society?
I haven't done a lot of work with psychedelics or a lot of reading in it, but my sense is that people have found a lot of relief with using psychedelics. And one of my primary teachers right now, Ram Dass, was one of the early pioneers of that research. I can see it. And I also think not everyone's going to need it. And it's only one tool, and it's not the tool.
Yes, there's plenty of tools, right? I hear you. Yeah.
One of the things Ram Dass talked about as to why he went on his spiritual path and found his guru Maharaji is that he was like, you keep coming with some of these psychedelic trips, people kept coming down, they kept coming out of it, they kept coming more back onto the earth. He was like, he just wanted to stay more in that that liminal space where sort of this, you can feel the spirit.
So if you could wave a magic wand to make the world a better place, what would you do? How would you do it? What would you change?
I don't know if I would change anything, but this is the image that comes up to me because you don't know how practical this is. I would just convene a big old campfire with just everybody, 9 billion people?
Coming up to it, I think. Yeah.
I'd have 9 billion of us. Some of us would be showing out. I'd be like, y'all, what is going on?
Yes. Nice.
I need everyone to come speak, come talk to the mic, just share. Let's just see what happens. That's what I would do. It would just be a big campfire. Big campfire.
A huge community. That sounds like community, right? And community.
That's what I do.
Community, I think, is something we lack in society. We don't really know our neighbours. So I think that is...
You're right.
That's where I feel like I'm wanting to go to, and that's where I feel like the world can be better with more community.
Right, and I mean, definitely... Listen, let me put my researcher hat on. So, from my understanding, we should be hordes of people roaming the earth. Some people a little bit more settled. Tribes of 75 to 100 people, groups. Because that's where, anthropologists and sociologists sort of you would know everyone in the community. You would know the people to kind of stay away from. People would be able to govern themselves a little bit better. So some things might have to be scaled down in some ways. I don't know. I don't know. Yes. But I do think there needs to be more listening, a lot more listening, sharing from the people that don't often share. Yes. A lot more listening.
Yes.
We need to listen to each other.
Yes.
And hear each other deeply. And we need to share our own stories.
Yes. And sharing isn't a weakness. And
hell no.
Where you get the alpha male and the one that's flexing in the gym, they might be hearing this and they might be saying, "Oh, I'm not going to share and express my emotions because what man does that? I'm a man. I'm not supposed to cry. I'm supposed to, be strong for the family." And I'm not sure if that fits in with making the world a better place.
Some of the people that have had the most guts I have ever seen have gotten a mic in a room and shared their story. And I'm just like, you know what? That's some courage right there.
Yeah.
I have the utmost respect. I may not even agree with their standpoint, but you know what? That courage and bravery that it took, the guts, the cojones that it took to get up there and say all that.
Yeah.
What? It's because what it does is it makes me stand up to attention to be like, what? Well, how much deeper can I dig in myself to be like, I'm going to put this stuff out there? Because when you can claim yourself in a group of people who love you, or some of them that don't love you, and you claim your story, that's powerful. That's some Superman and Superwoman type shit.
And that's what young people should be looking up to, those kind of people.
Right, if you share it with respect and love and honesty and courage. Of course, all of this stuff needs to be couched in boundaries of love.
Yes.
It's not just rage sharing.
Yes. So, just to wrap up, we're getting to the end of the interview. What do you think the meaning of life is?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this sounds so cliche.
Go for it.
I'm a little hoarse from all of my partying out in London, but love, love, love.
Nice.
Boom, 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 love. I mean,
Love.
I don't have a better answer than
That's a great answer. You know, love is a great answer, and
Thank you.
because I think we need more of it. And you, like you say, love is here. Let's just embrace it. Let's notice it, and let's take it on board.
Right. Drink in all that deliciousness, darling.
Yeah.
And when someone comes to your house, you serve up a nice picture of it.
Amen.
And hospitality. That's it.
Nice. Perhaps we can do this again in the future.
Oh, for sure. I'd love it.
This has been a really good chat, and let's see if we can all collectively make the world a better place. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you.